Question 4 is asking you to discuss and illustrate the oxyhemoglobin curve and what factors shifted to left and right. The oxyhemoglobin curve illustrates the relationship between partial pressure of oxygen and the saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. At a high partial pressure, such as in the lungs, hemoglobin has a high affinity for oxygen and is almost fully saturated, so about like nearly 100%, 98%. At a low partial pressure, such as in the tissues, hemoglobin has a low affinity for oxygen and releases it to the tissues to support cellular metabolism. Shifting the curve to the left would indicate that the hemoglobin binds oxygen more tightly, meaning that at any given partial pressure, the hemoglobin will be more saturated with oxygen and it is harder for oxygen to be released to the tissues. Shifting the curve to the left could be due to a decreased carbon dioxide concentration because hemoglobin binds more oxygen in the lungs when CO2 levels are low. It could also be an increase of pH or a lower temperature. And then shifting to the curve to the right indicates that hemoglobin releases oxygen more readily to the tissues, meaning that at any given partial pressure of oxygen, hemoglobin will be less saturated with oxygen. This kind of goes into the Bohr effect. The Bohr effect describes how changes in pH and carbon dioxide concentration influence hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen, which essentially increased carbon dioxide and decreased pH reduce hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen, causing the curve to shift to the right. This is beneficial because tissues are producing more carbon dioxide due to metabolism, require more oxygen, so the body ensures oxygen is more readily released. A decreased carbon dioxide and increased pH can increase hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen and shift the curve to the left. An example of this would be during exercise. Muscle cells produce more carbon dioxide and lactic acid, which shift the curve to the right. This ensures that more oxygen is released from hemoglobin to meet the metabolic demands of the muscles. And then for the Haldane effect refers to the increased ability of deoxygenated hemoglobin to bind to CO2. So when hemoglobin is deoxygenated, it has a higher affinity for carbon dioxide, and this helps transport carbon dioxide from the tissues back to the lungs to be able to exhale. When hemoglobin binds to oxygen in the lungs, it has a lower affinity for carbon dioxide, helping it to release carbon dioxide for exhaling. Yep. And then the Haldane effect and the Bohr effect work together to promote oxygen release in the tissues where carbon dioxide is high and oxygen uptake in the lungs is necessary. I can draw the curve. So the oxygen hemoglobin curve on the x-axis is the partial pressure, and on the y, it's the concentration of hemoglobin. So it kind of just starts out like that. So at a higher partial pressure, hemoglobin concentration is at its highest. And then a rightward shift would be due to a higher temperature, high carbon dioxide concentration, low pH, or increased exercise. And then a shift to the left would be a decrease in CO2, an increase in pH, and a decrease in temperature.